So as a quick introduction, I'm just a guy who likes to watch superhero movies. I've always loved the Marvel films and the DC films. And in recent years, I've been drawn into this little corner of the social media world on YouTube where people talk about these movies and criticize them or praise them and so forth. And overall, I really am just a fan of superhero films. I was a comic book fan as a young person, and I enjoy the characters, I enjoy the stories and the spectacle. I want both Marvel and DC superhero films to be successful because I enjoy seeing those characters up on the big screen. And over the years, of course, DC has had its struggles with audiences and with critics, and often I've felt like it wasn't necessarily completely fair, that the playing field wasn't exactly even, that sometimes it seems like Marvel films get a little extra credit for something, and DC films are subjected to more extra criticism. And it came to a head in my mind with the Supergirl film, which obviously hasn't done great at the box office. It's done very poorly, actually. No question about that. It has an audience reaction on Rotten Tomatoes, which is basically on par with, say, Captain America, the first Avenger, or the Thor film, the original Thor film. Obviously, those films did a little better, quite a bit better at the box office than Supergirl did. But their audience reactions were similar. Critical reactions were better than the critical reactions for Supergirl. I've read some of the critics, and they, some of them love it, some of them really don't love it. Some people say a lot of very harsh things about it. So I felt today like taking a little time while I'm just driving around to put a little reaction into some of what I've been hearing, to qualify it a little bit. I mean, everybody has the right to their opinion. Nobody has to love a movie. It's obviously very subjective. There's no accounting for taste. But some people are saying things that are more like, there's some kind of objective quality standard that it doesn't meet, that kind of thing. And that's where I think it seems to me to be going a little overboard. So I thought I would react to John Campea video. It's one of the people I have often watched to catch up on news and find out what their perspectives are. They seem generally pretty balanced and fair. I don't think we're aligned politically and philosophically in many ways, but we do enjoy a lot of the same things about films. He loved Thunderbolts, I thought it was crap. Stuff like that. But I think I'll play some of the video and just react to it as we go, just to give some of my own thoughts and context that I think maybe they're not really taking fully into account.
Is now out and in theaters, and I went to go see it last night. I put up my out of theater reaction to it, so you guys who have seen that probably already know what I thought about the movie. We're going to review it here, and I am going to warn you in advance that while one of the most, how do I put this, lacking scripts that I've seen turn into a movie in a while, this movie doesn't have a lot of plot, and there's not a lot to spoil. But I may be going into some spoiler stuff here. Believe me when I tell you, it really won't affect your viewing of the movie. But I do want to give you the heads up that this review will have some spoilers in it. So if you don't want to hear any, I'm not going to go, none of us here are going to go through beat by beat the movie. But I mean, there are going to be a couple spoilers in here. I do want to make you aware of that. And if you don't want to hear any spoilers at all, now's a good time for you to check out of the show.
And I will also potentially be saying things that might be spoilers, so I am also letting you know if you don't want to have any spoilers, maybe come back later.
Did want to give you that kind of a heads up. So off I went to go see Supergirl. And like I did in my out of theater reaction, I will start off by saying the things I liked about it. The first thing I have to mention, I did touch on this in my out of theater reaction. I already thought Millie Alcock was a great casting for it when they announced her. I thought that even more so when I saw her at the end of Superman. And I believe it now more than ever. She's great for the character. She's a great choice for the character. I think, given better material, that as the DCU moves forward, if James Gunn doesn't leave like I think he will, a lot of caveats there. She is an amazing casting. Not quite on the same level as David Cornsweet for Superman, but she is a perfect person to pick to play this character. Absolutely, that stood out to me the most.
So far, so good. I don't have any issue with any of that, of course.
The next thing that I thought was really good about the movie is, again, even though he's not in a lot of it, David Cornsweet as Superman. Chris, you kind of alluded to this earlier, that every minute he's on screen in the movie, you just smile. Like, he is just so joyous as Superman that I couldn't help but grin every time he was on screen. Another thing I really quite liked about the movie was there's a little, as you see in the trailers, there's a bit of backstory to Kara's origin with the city of Argo and things like that from Krypton. And I thought the background stuff they did on Argo was really quite interesting. And I enjoyed that part. It only took up about, I don't know, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, about 6 minutes of screen time altogether.
Yeah, not that much.
Yeah, it didn't take up much of the screen time there. But that whole part of the movie, I thought was a winning formula. I thought that was done really quite well.
And here's ironically, I would say some of the writing in that particular portion, to my mind, was probably the weakest. Maybe it'll come up a little bit, but basically some of the things that Kara's mother said to her in Argo were pretty transparently set up to excuse the exact way that Kara was portrayed in the film. I don't think it was necessary probably to do that, but it was a little bit overdone. So I'm gonna give you that as a mild criticism of the script. Definitely I would have probably ameliorated that a little bit if I had been involved in the editing or the review process. And maybe he felt the same way about those particular lines. I don't know, but in general he liked it, and I agree with that. It's pretty good overall.
And I'm pretty sure all the credits were spelled correctly. Yeah, that's the
oh man.
That's the last positive I have to say about it. So there are.
That's quite a shot. It was funny. I like that. It's funny, but I disagree with it in some ways, of course.
Pros. And as I said in my out of theater reaction, I think this movie is a little bit better than terrible. Like, I don't think the movie overall is.
And I'll say, I think the movie is a little bit less than superb. Let's put it that way.
Completely terrible. It's not Morbius, it's not Madam Web, it's not Kraven the Hunter. It's better than all of those, but it is still decidedly a bad film to me. And you guys know I am not a DC hater. I am the opposite of a James Gunn hater. I have been cheering for this movie. I got a little apprehensive about it, admittedly, at CinemaCon when they gave us the presentation for it, and I was like, this doesn't look as good as I was hoping it would look. And that's when I got a little bit nervous about it. But I've been hoping for the best, believing the best, wanting this movie to be great. You guys know this. If you guys watch my show, you know I have been.
That is true. I agree with all of that. He has been reasonably fair in his pre-release praises and criticisms, for sure. That's one reason why I went ahead and watched this review.
But this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen made by a great director. Because make no mistake about it, Craig Gillespie is a great director. Whether you're talking about Lars and the Real Girl, or you're talking about the Academy Award nominated film I, Tonya, or you're talking about his great turn with Cruella, or you're talking about one of the most underappreciated films the last bunch of years called Dumb Money, he is a great director. Not every...
I have to take his word for that. I haven't watched any of the other films. I'm not a film buff overall, not a, critic of filmography. Just a fan and a person who has some experience with literature. So I think I have some grounds to be able to participate in some of the critical discussion.
The movie he's made is great, but this is one of the worst films I've seen done by a great director. I've seen a lot of worse movies, but by lesser directors. This movie, Chris, I don't know what you're going to think about this.
Mhm.
It felt incoherent. It felt disjointed.
Yes, I agree on that.
It felt like there was no flow to the story. One of the big things I said...
Now, I want to say something about all that first. I think some of that criticism is reasonable. The plot is one that is quite clearly... It's driven by sort of the MacGuffin hunt. So it's a pretty simplistic storyline where basically the characters are going to be dragged through a narrative to try to achieve some goal. Now, I haven't seen Mandalorian and Grogu, but I hear that that one was similar to that. There's obviously been a lot of films that are like that. And in this case, it's interesting to me because I think John Campea and some others have said that they were fans of the original material that they adapted for this film, or partly adapted for this film, which was the Supergirl One of Tomorrow comic series. And I had not read the comic series. I had heard a few people going ballistic over it online because they thought it was terrible. I never read it. I didn't really look at it except for a few images that came up in videos along the way, and some of the dialogue or narration that was presented in those videos. But because of this criticism, I did go ahead and actually pay the money to download the Kindle version of the comic series, and I went through it, and it was, I agree with the people who hated it. It is crap. It is bullshit. Yeah, excuse my language. It is total crap. It is terribly written, pretentiously written. It's self-consciously the writer tries to make it sort of echo great literature like maybe Tolkien and others in the fantasy genre. The long and the short of it is, it's pretentious, but it exposes a total lack of the kind of literary acumen that it would take to execute something like that in an effective way. And it is everything he just said about the film on steroids. It is incoherent. The characters are flat and they are poorly characterized, poorly fleshed out. The plot is basically, it's like the worst elements of the film times 10, because it's just these two characters chasing this evil villain across the universe, trying to catch up with him while he and his brigands leave behind a trail of genocides that they've committed. And they're not motivated by anything except just that, somehow this bumpkin from this backward planet who basically stumbled into a spacecraft and suddenly somehow got from there to another planet where Supergirl was going to go back to it, but he stole her spaceship, and then he gets arrested, and then he somehow inspires them to become a bunch of genocidal maniacs by saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be great to be genocidal maniacs?" And they're like, "Wow, what a great idea! You must be our new member and lead us on this great quest." I mean, I'm obviously I'm obviously paraphrasing, but I think if you read it, you'd probably be like, yeah, that's pretty much what happened, and it's totally without merit. There's nothing in that makes any sense. Anyway, probably get into a little bit more of that when they get into some of their criticisms later in the video. But the bottom line is, I don't know why they chose this as the model for the film. I don't mind the premise of the film, the premise that Kara Zor-El went through a completely different life story than Superman, and that it's an interesting character study to see how that affected her and how she came through it, and what her arc to becoming a hero, how that arc was different because of her background. To me, that's an interesting premise, and I will say the movie improves on the comic in every single respect. It makes more sense. It is more, the character decisions make more sense. The plot is tighter. The action makes more sense. I mean, I know some people have said that the imagery, some people have said the imagery in the comic is amazing. I'm like, well, it's very colorful. And some of it is just stupid and definitely would not appeal to a mass audience. I mean, these brigands are sailing around the galaxy in a ship. You know, this is not going to fly, in my mind, with an audience of people who doesn't, who doesn't live in this semi-fantasy world, but actually expects something more sci-fi. So I don't think it was an option to do some of those images. You know, like they could have portrayed a big fight with a dragon, and I skimmed through the comic rather quickly, and I know people have talked about these dragon images, and I'm like, I only remember one panel, and it was just a colorful mishmash. But I shouldn't dwell on that. The point is, the only real point is, if you loved that material, that original material, and I think he said this in an earlier video, I'm not going to go back and try to prove that, but I think he said he liked the story, the original story. But anyway, if you were to look at the original material and then look at this film, I think anyone would agree that the film is better in every respect than the source material. It makes more sense, it's tighter, the comic took place over a period of weeks and spanned actually one end of reality to the other, and that part, of course, made no sense whatsoever in the comic. And so it's ironic that there's a complaint about the plot when the plot is modeled after but highly improved from the basic plot of the original source material. So I don't think it's fair to criticize the screenplay, and of course this is the point I want to remember. He emphasized that it was a screenplay that was so bad that it shouldn't have been made into a movie. So I'm really waiting for the slam dunk evidence about the script, and I've said a few things about the script that I don't think were super great, and there's obviously it's not perfect, no question it's not perfect, but is it so far below the standard of a feature film that it should never have been made? I don't think so.
I've been really dying to ask somebody else who's seen the movie this. You guys know from the trailers that Krypto gets poisoned, and one of the big motivating things in the entire movie is that Kara's got to try to get the antidote to save Krypto. The problem was Krypto gets poisoned really early.
Before you see the connection.
Exactly. And then later in the movie, they do flashbacks to show the bond and the connection between
Big
Kara
mistake.
and Crypto. Huge, juvenile, beginner level mistake. Like,
Yeah.
they first, like, we're supposed to buy into, we're supposed to feel this when Crypto gets poisoned, right? But, and I'm sure we do to a degree because we already know Crypto from Superman, but
Yeah.
they do that first and then later set up why it's so important to Kara and their bond, and it sort of, it robbed the movie of that big emotional hook because they didn't get us invested in their relationship before Crypto gets poisoned.
Okay. I think this point is complete bunk. Now, first of all, the movie was edited, and the scenes that were flashing back to the early life, the original meeting, let's say, between Crypto and Kara or Supergirl, in the actual latter, in the actual film that they released, the version of the film that they released, that flashback occurred later in the film. Do we know for a fact that the original script was written in that order? I mean, can we say that the screenwriter, Ana Nogueira, actually didn't put the foundational scenes, about the original meeting between Kara and Crypto in the early portion before the poisoning? I don't think we know that. I mean, maybe he doesn't say he knows it. I don't know it. Maybe someone knows it, but until someone shows me the original script and that it was written that way, I don't think we know that. So this is just an assumption. So at some point, they made the decision to put those scenes in the film in the middle, long after Crypto was poisoned. But the film opened with several scenes between Crypto and Kara. They were the two primary characters in almost every early scene except the ones that are flashing over to another subplot. And in those scenes, there is nothing happening except Crypto and Kara showing their closeness of their bond and the importance in which they hold each other, and the kind of relationship they have between a girl and her not so well-behaved dog, whom she adores. And one of the lines that's in the trailer is in that area where she says, "Home is wherever you are, buddy." So to claim that there was no predicate set before the poisoning for the closeness of their relationship and the deep depth of their bond, I mean, to say that, I can't imagine saying it unless you hadn't actually watched the film, because that was pretty much the point of everything that happened in the early part of the film, other than also establishing the relationship between Superman and Supergirl and the way he was hoping that she would come back to Earth and try to find her home there, and she was feeling like it wasn't really her home. So all of those elements were set up in the first few scenes in the film. So are you suggesting that the audience who sees this close relationship between a girl and her dog, even if they hadn't seen Superman or any of the previews or anything, I think it would be, it's kind of like second nature for Americans to be like, wow, to look at a person and their dog and to probably understand that there's a special bond there, even without any of the other setup, even without any other of the context. You just see them together and you assume that there's a bond between them, because that's how we are. A boy and his dog means something. You can't say, or a girl and her dog. That's a phrase that carries a tremendous amount of meaning. But they didn't just leave it at that. They dedicated several minutes of the early portion of the film to portraying the cuteness of the relationship between these two individuals. So I don't have a clue where they're coming from here. And again, I don't know, I'm not concerned mostly to criticize anyone's motives or suggest why they may have jumped to the wrong conclusion about this, or at least somewhat unjustified. You don't have to like it. You could have said, well, I wish I had seen that part sooner. Okay. But it wasn't necessary in my mind to establish that there's a bond between them, and that it's an ultimate tragedy when you see this dog wounded like that. Anyway, all that just to say, I think it's preposterous to suggest that there's such a big flaw in the script because those predicates were not all set at the beginning, because we don't know that they weren't, and we don't know that they needed to be.
Was a bad thing. And I'll say this too. This movie, I will go down always remembering it as Craig Gillespie trying to do a bad James Gunn impersonation.
Yeah.
Because I felt like he stepped in there and tried to impress James Gunn by making it very James Gunn-like. And that was a mistake. And Daddy wasn't there anyway because he's off making Man of Tomorrow, which is something else I'll complain about in a second. And the music choices, were terrible.
Yeah.
Like this
The needle drops are not good. It really makes you
No.
appreciate James Gunn and how he pulls it off.
And can I
It was
ask a
so
question? Let me ask this question, Chris. Why?
Okay, before he asks that question, I mean, you don't have to love the music choices. There's just music, and I felt like they evoked the right emotion at the right time. There's a scene when when she's listening to the ugly urban sounds of Metropolis and feeling alone and isolated and being reminded how starkly just how little this has in common with her memories of home. And she then puts she starts a song and puts on her headphones, and this was a flashback from a point where she was suffering and potentially dying. So to me, the music, I mean, I don't know the song. It was a beautiful lyrical composition, some beautiful guitar strumming, and to me, it was very evocative and emotional, and it emphasized the emotion of the situation, which is where she was feeling down, trying to kind of drown her sorrows in the music, and Crypto was being Crypto, silly Crypto, flying around the room, being silly, and making her giggle. So it was another scene emphasizing the closeness of their relationship with music that seemed to evoke the right sense of melancholy, but also joy. I don't know. I mean, everybody has the right to decide they don't like the music, but I don't think it's objectively inferior to anything. It wasn't like Guardians of the Galaxy level, invoking everyone's nostalgia for the 70s or something. It's not like that, but it's music that is evocative in the moment and seems to go well with the emotions that are being portrayed on the screen. So I just don't think I don't believe that's an objective point. And of course, the general claim that Gillespie is just trying to impress James Gunn, whatever. I mean, he did some scenes that are kind of reminiscent of some of the scenes that we saw in Superman. Does that mean that he was trying to impress someone? I always think it's dangerous to spend all of your energy psychoanalyzing people who did something you don't like. I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. but maybe he just did it that way because that was the best way he could think of to put, the characters and the plot together the way he thought it should be done. And for me, and a lot of other even critics and audience members, again, reminding everyone, it has the same audience reaction score as Captain America, the First Avenger, and Thor. So, is it a disaster for the DCU for its second film? And of course, it's a lot better than the actual second MCU film, which was The Incredible Hulk. And that film did much worse as an audience score than Supergirl did. So, the death knell for the DCU is premature.
In some dive bar in a far end of the galaxy is a lounge singer singing classic 80s Earth songs.
No. That is true.
I'm like, what the hell is this?
That is so true.
It's so bad.
Okay. The girl from Ipanema was played in a bar on this other planet. First of all, is it unusual for authors who live on Earth, who are writing about space, to be a bit humanocentric, if you will? Do we always just basically assume that basically humans are special? Of course we do. That's the nature of it. Now, if we look at the history of the DCU that we already know, what do we know so far? We know that for 300 years there have been metahumans on Earth. And certainly some of them, possibly as far back as 300 years ago, could have been able to travel in space. We also know that Superman has been openly active on Earth as Superman for 3 years. What we don't know is that he wasn't secretly doing things even before then that might have involved space travel. He was certainly capable of doing it, both technologically and physically. Also, for 20 years or so, I mean, we don't know exactly, but something like that, the Green Lantern of the entire sector has been an English-speaking human. And if he's been active for 20 years, then he grew up in the 80s. Would it be inconceivable that a Green Lantern hanging around in a dive bar somewhere would share some of the music that he loved? I mean, it's certainly conceivable to me. I mean, we don't know the linguistic situation here. There's kind of everybody speaks English for the most part, but then it's referred to as kind of the common tongue. Now, is English the common tongue? Maybe. We don't know. It's kind of simpler to write a story in which English is used because you don't want to have everybody speaking with some foreign tongue. But there are several different languages that are used, including Kryptonian, that have subtitles in the film, which seems reasonable. I just think it's pretty petty to criticize the film for, English music in a dive bar where people either speak English or some of them might know it. And certainly it's not inconceivable that many of them have had a lot of experience with an English-speaking hero from Earth who might not know a lot of their languages. Of course, I guess he can use his ring to translate. At least that's how they did it in the comics. But anyway, I don't really think that's a serious criticism, to be honest with you.
And guys, just I gave you the heads up, but these are the two little spoilers I'm going to give. One isn't important, one kind of is important, but okay. This is not a problem throughout the whole film, but it represents the small choices that were all wrong. At one point, you see in the trailers, Clem of the Yellow Hills. Is it Clem? Cleft?
Creme.
Cletus?
Creme. Yeah.
Fuck boy. That's what he is. So,
Sorry about the language. Did he watch the film?
kneeling down in front of Kara and going, and this is a good line. This is a good line. This is the best line in the movie. Your eyes are beautiful when you cry. Much pain. It's a good line. That's a good line. Only good line in the movie. It's a very good line. But in that, you see there's like the black lines in her neck, which is the common comic book visual of somebody being poisoned or whatever. And I saw a lot of people online, well before the movie came out, guess that somehow she's in the presence of kryptonite. Okay, so this is a minor spoiler, but the thing that leads to that moment where he says, your eyes are beautiful in the crowd, he shoots her with kryptonite darts.
That's mean.
What? Does he have kryptonite darts?
Yeah, does it?
The way the universe is set up,
There's only
What?
2 Kryptonians out there.
and that they don't even know about. And he goes,
Okay. He says they don't even know about the Kryptonians. Was he watching the movie? Krem, without ever having been told in the film, uses his own language version of Kryptonian. So he figured out that she was a Kryptonian, and the other character, Ruthie, also was aware of the fate of the planet Krypton. And also another line from Kara indicated her conclusion that they had put her in a particular situation because they understood that she was Kryptonian. Now, this is an adaptation of a story. And in that story, Kara was struck by 3 arrows. In the film, she was struck by 3 kryptonite darts in a different context. So it was clearly a scene that was inspired by the original material. So I think it is pretty obvious that they were basically emulating that scene. And in the original material, now Superman had been active for a lot longer, well, maybe not a lot though. This was Supergirl's 21st birthday in the comic book, and Superman maybe had only been active for 5 or 10 years. So it's not that big a departure in time from the original source material. And in that original source material, they very much did know about Kryptonians, the bad guys, the brigands. And in the original source material, they had kryptonite. So, is it the script? It's not the script. It's the source material. Now, would there be people in the galaxy at this point who would have known about Kryptonians? I mean, Superman tends to get attention when he goes places, especially among evil people, because he makes their lives very difficult. And what do we know about the DCU at this point? We know that there used to be kryptonite on Earth. We also know that by the time of the Superman film, it was no longer there. So where did it go? Where was it taken? I mean, you don't destroy matter, generally speaking. So if it's off-world, some of it might have been obtained by bad people. And some people who understand what a Kryptonian is could definitely be trying to figure out a way to protect themselves against the potential interference of a Kryptonian. So basically the script had already established that there was knowledge of Kryptonians. Even though there are only 2, they are important people, just as the Green Lantern of the sector is a very important person that probably everyone would be aware of. So to me, it's a pretty weak criticism to get so upset over the idea that these bad guys who could and apparently did know that at some point, because they're bad guys, they might run across a Kryptonian who always, when they're good Kryptonians, they're going to want to stop the bad guys. Plus, we don't actually know that there are no other Kryptonians. We just only know about the two at this point. So, I think that's a very weak criticism also.
I've been saving these for you.
Yeah,
what
he said that.
What do you mean you've been How does that make any sense at all? And how did you just magically come up with kryptonite darts? And it was just so utterly preposterous.
Yeah.
And that leads this is the big spoiler, guys, okay? This is the big spoiler. It's not going to surprise any of you. All of you guessed this at the ending anyway. But I'm just warning you, if you want to jump away now, jump away now. But Chris, and I refer to Chris Rock because I know you haven't seen Supergirl. You're seeing it tonight, correct?
Me?
Yeah, you're seeing Supergirl
Yeah, I'm
today.
seeing it in IMAX at 4. Thanks for the spoiler.
So I'm about to give you a big spoiler at the end there. So, the whole thing is, Kara, Supergirl, keeps trying to convince Rufy, the little girl with the sword, that no, you can't kill fuckboy Cletus because it'll ruin you. It'll ruin you for the rest of your life. You'll never get over it. It'll damage you and destroy who you are. And it'll be so terrible. No, you can't kill him.
Is he from Arkansas?
And then at the end, Supergirl, Rufy's got the sword to him, and she goes, no, you can't do it. It'll destroy who you are. It'll take away all your memories and you'll never have peace, and blah, blah, blah. Just walk away, Rufy, walk away. So we know, okay, so Supergirl's gonna kill him. So sure enough, Supergirl kills him, right? But here's the part that kills me. After spending the movie verbal vomiting onto Rufy, oh no, this will destroy who you are, you'll never be happy, you'll never have peace. Throughout the whole movie of Supergirl is super troubled. She's discontented. She has no peace. She's just like, her life, she's just a mess, right?
Well, look, she works at Hot Topic.
Just describes everybody that works on Hot Topic. But then Chris, she kills him at the end, right?
Yeah.
And then goes home to Earth and is talking with Superman, and she is the most at peace and content and happy, and now has her life together, and now understands what she wants to do with her life as the result of killing the guy that she spent the whole movie telling Rufy, oh no, it'll destroy who you are, when killing him is what actually fixes all of her problems. It was so badly contrived, so badly executed. And again, the dialogue is horrible throughout the movie, other than your eyes are beautiful when you cry. That's a great line. I'll never take that away from it.
So, now they're going to get into this a little more. Maybe I'll just wait on some of this. But Supergirl never suggested that she herself couldn't or wouldn't kill. Now, that is part of the controversy around this film, and possibly that slightly darker aspect of Supergirl's character is what some audience members don't appreciate. Obviously, people who know Supergirl from other media probably know that, generally speaking, she's been portrayed as having the same ethic as Superman, which is that you don't kill. But this film obviously is focused on the opposite premise, that she comes at this from a different angle. The words that she uses in the script to talk about why she doesn't support the idea that Ruthie, who's like a 13-year-old girl, should kill Krem for revenge, is that she doesn't think the revenge will satisfy her, and she also doesn't think it would be good for a child to become a murderer. So she is not coming at that particular angle from the idea that anyone who kills someone, even for revenge, but just generically to kill someone, is going to be harmed by it to the same extent that she is saying that she feels like a 13-year-old girl would be harmed by it. So I don't think that's a fair criticism, because they're not. He's criticizing the script without taking full account of what the script actually says. And again, what the script says is that it's not good for a 13-year-old girl to kill. As for why Kara feels more at peace at the end, again, going through the entire film, and I have the advantage of having watched the film multiple times, where I don't think that's the case for John Campea. It's not one of the films that he likes to watch multiple times, but he watches many of them multiple times. So I've been able to review in my mind what was going on in the script. My first viewing, I had to digest the way that she killed the evil character. Actually, the second time I watched it, I felt differently about it, because I had followed closely the way she approached the idea of killing, and she never once suggested that she herself would not kill under any circumstances. But she did suggest, for the reasons I stated, that she didn't think that the 13-year-old girl should do it. And in fact, I think in the scene, the way Millie Alcock plays it, she clearly has decided, as they said, that Krem is such an evil person and irredeemable that he deserves to die, not necessarily for revenge, but more for justice, given that there wasn't any justice at hand. As far as that goes, and the redemption of Kara, there were other elements that really played a bigger role in her redemption. One of those elements being the criticism that Ruthie used on her, which was to remind her that she keeps going to red planets where she has no power, even though she has the power in other places to do good. At one point, one of her lines was to basically chide Supergirl for going and getting drunk and doing that to try to escape from her responsibilities. So among the other things, which obviously, yes, she was put through the ringer by some of her own failures during the film, and her failures resulted in Krem doing more harm to others that she could have prevented if she hadn't been poisoned or weakened and so forth. So the redemption arc was not driven primarily by whether or not Ruthie was going to kill Krem, but her impulse not to have Ruthie kill Krem seems obviously justified. So I think that criticism also is not objective.
That had all the hallmarks of a first-time screenwriter, at least a first-time screenwriter for a major motion picture, that you should do first times on tentpoles.
So far, at least in my opinion, almost none of his criticisms of the script have panned out. I don't think they're fair. I don't think they're justified based on the context in which the script was written. The script was written to adapt the source material and everything he's complaining about was native to the source material, and then the source material was much, much worse. I mean, it wasn't just that the bandits had kryptonite. It was pretty clear that Supergirl was going to die in that scene, and she was actually rescued by someone else in the comic because the kryptonite was killing her. So they had kryptonite, but beyond that, this Krem guy, who they keep making fun of as Cletus, the Krem guy was actually conjuring up things that the comic writer called Mordru globes. Now, I've never ever heard, I haven't read comics since the 80s or early 90s, to be honest, but a Mordru globe was never a thing that I encountered in DC Comics. Mordru is a character that occurred in DC Comics, but he was a 31st century character, at least in the 80s and maybe into the early 90s. But a Mordru globe is like a out of the blue, I can throw this globe at you and it will send you wherever I want to send you, and you can't stop it. So it's basically a get out of jail free card. And why would this guy have had access to it? It makes absolutely no sense. So whatever criticisms there are of the film are multiple times over criticisms of the original source material. To say that the script is amateurish, I think I would expect him to have a lot more evidence to be able to justify that. Some of the dialogue wasn't great, I'll grant you that. Some of it, I would have probably made a different creative choice. So, were there problems with the script? I would say yes, there were problems with the script. But I've seen problems with so many scripts. I mean, he liked the Thunderbolts, and the Thunderbolt script was awful. The plot was terrible. The motivations of the characters made absolutely no sense in most cases. It was just driven by the plot to try to get these people to come together. You know, like regular humans fighting super soldiers, and then regular humans fighting super duper extra super soldiers, and they survive. No, none of that is plausible. But he loved that film because it was about mental health. So, oddball stuff.
Lobo was good, but even with Lobo, they went a little bit too hammy at times. So I walked out very disappointed in the film. Very disappointed in it. And look, I'm a DC fan. I'm cheering for the DCU. I'm a big James Gunn supporter. Anyway, Chris, that's me. I've gone on long enough about that. You've seen the movie yourself.
Yes.
You and I have not talked about this.
No.
What did you think of Supergirl?
I, like you, came out disappointed. I don't think this movie made me scared for the future of DC. I'm still super excited for Man of Tomorrow, and even like you, Millie Alcock, I think she's great in the role, and her herself as the character, I want to see more of it. I'm excited what she'll do in Man of Tomorrow because James Gunn's talking about he's already filmed some scenes with her, so that'll be cool. But this movie, it really came off so average to me. I'm not so much on you where I thought it was like awful or bad. I agree on your sentiment about a great director with a bad movie with Craig Gillespie, but it's in that middle ground where it's almost just as bad as in it was just average. There's nothing that exciting to talk about, and equally not even that much really to really fixate on the negatives. It's just kind of flowing through the motions, and that I think was the biggest problem I had. Is it's adapting great source material, but it's just
great source material.
Okay, there we go.
But it's just doing the hitting the.
So that's what they say. It's great source material. What the? Did you read the source material? I mean, it is in every way many times worse. The writing was garbage. The script is 10 times better than the original source material in every way. It is preposterous to me that anyone could come away from that source material and say it's so good. I mean, there were heavy political messages in the source material, and maybe there's people who just have to love it because they don't want to seem like they are opposed to the political messages. But the quality of the writing, no, it was terrible. Every issue was basically just a rehash of the same stuff from the previous issue, where some poor race of generic-looking aliens was wiped out, and different ways of, feeling the impact of all of that death and destruction and having it weighing on your soul. No, the source material was really the problem here, and the script did its best to rescue the source material, and in my mind, the fact that they made at least a movie that some people think is just okay out of it means they really succeeded, because the source material was a disaster.
Check marks of it. It's like, okay, this girl's family has to die. Okay, we did that. She has to meet Supergirl and go on the adventure. Okay, we did that. Like, you're right. The flow isn't there. The editing choices of where certain.
That is literally what happened in the source material. That's it. And there was no justification for it. There was even less justification than what they gave to it in the film. It's really sad to me that people can say things like, it adapted such great source material, but did such a terrible job. Talk about the source material, dude. What was wrong? What was right about it? What was missing from the film that was in the source material? The answer is nothing. You can't find anything. Only things that made the film decent were the things that it added that were not in the source material, like justifications for anything that happened.
Things come about just could have impacted more. I so agree on the art with Supergirl and that. And I have no problem with her killing the villain at the end.
Neither.
That could work, but it did not work with the arc they were setting up, with what they were trying to convey with Ruthie. And to me, even with her backstory, they don't do enough to suggest why she would be so broken. Like, I get you lost your family and planet, but that line she says about, I see the truth in people, no one in her life has wronged her. Line she says about, I see the truth in people, no one in her life has wronged her. No one has.
That's a great.
You're saying that's a great point. It's not a great point. She never, in her, being cynical and seeing the truth because you don't see reality through rose-colored glasses does not require that you suffered wrongs at the hands of any person. You can see the truth because you are cynical enough not to be duped by the happy talk, basically. So I don't think this criticism lands either, at least not objectively. Subjectively, you can say, well, I don't like the way they carried that off, but they played the pathos of all of the things that she went through, watching her parents dying and then being sent away by herself to also carry with her the survivor guilt of that situation, and the loneliness and the feeling of being isolated and having her people gone and her planet gone. They downplay this as if it's not that big a deal, but I think it is a big deal, and I think the film does a good job of portraying the fact that it was a big deal.
Point.
She didn't have like her own creme or the Krypton. Like, I thought because they made it seem in the trailer like, Krypton, that chunk is left, and then maybe the society collapsed in itself and people started, their true colors came out when like food ran low or something else. When you get the actual story, it's like it's no one's fault. Like, there's nobody hurt you, nobody made you feel that way where you like build this wall and hate people. Like,
and that was the same as the source material. So again, what is this criticism? For anyone who loves the source material, to offer this criticism to me is just unreasonable. I mean, it's irrational, at least.
if anything, your family was great.
Yeah,
So
you
it's
were
like,
loved.
where's this disdain for people coming from when even when she meets?
Yeah, you were loved by people who died in front of you, or that you left behind to die. So that's not traumatic at all.
Mark, he's nothing but nice to her. So it's definitely, there was some elements that I just felt like could have been better fleshed out, or is there more to it maybe that was left on the editing room floor? I don't know, but I agree with my disappointment. And man, James Gunn just, no, I understand with him. He talks a big game about, no, our scripts are finished. Our scripts are great. We're not doing it like Marvel. And I'm just like, man, this is the same writer who's doing Wonder Woman. You know, I'm a little worried now.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that's going to change.
Well, so far, I haven't heard a legitimate, objective criticism of the script.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess it. And you know, here's the other thing. With some comic book movies that are disappointing, quite often one of the positives we can fall back on is, okay, maybe overall the movie wasn't great, but you know, it had some really good action.
Mm-hmm.
Supergirl does not have good action.
Pretty generic and muddy.
Oh,
So obviously that's a subjective view also, and I've seen other critics who share it. Other critics seem to like it fine, and obviously, you know, 75% score on the audience means that quite a lot of the audience members probably liked it too. Not everyone. Some people don't like the coloration of the scenes, but they all worked for me. They were pretty exciting, pretty interesting. You know, they play off the same aspect in some ways that Superman did, where, you know, a person is just standing amazed while the superhero goes through the things that the superhero can do that no one else can do. And that's an iconic comic book movie type thing to do. So I don't see where the criticism really comes from on the action, other than obviously people can not like it, and it's subjective.
that's a great word for it, muddy. A lot of the action just felt muddy, poorly shot. There's a couple of moments in the movie that I appreciated that are like, I always appreciate this in superhero movies, when there are these, and you know what I'm talking about, Rob, when there are these moments where what I call the superhero manifests. It's like where the superhero has a moment where it's like, oh God, everybody else here is totally screwed, because now this hero is about to go full-blown badass and kick everybody's asses. And there are a couple of those moments in Supergirl that got an emotional response out of me, and I felt pretty good. But just once the moment happens and they get into the action, it's like, this is some pretty lame action. And they should have had much better action for Lobo. They should have had much better thing. And you know what other mistake they made? They've said Lobo's name once. If you're trying to establish this new character for a wider universe,
okay, they didn't say the name Lobo enough. It's a terrible script.
they say his name once, like, oh, that's Lobo.
I mean, isn't it going to be kind of a silly script if everybody keeps calling Lobo by name? I mean, I know that comic books tend to do that. You know, comic book dialogue, of course, is kind of hilariously redundant. But, you know, to have people constantly saying, oh, Lobo! Lobo's here! Oh no, it's Lobo! I don't think that would be natural.
And his name is never said again in the entire movie. So, yeah, anyway, Rob, I hope we're not raining on your hope too much.
No, I just think...
I think that's probably it. Anyway, overall, the criticisms they offer are criticisms more relevant to the source material, which they praise without any facts, and the criticisms of the script all amount to either completely unfair or partially unfair criticisms, or just subjective reactions that can be different from one person to the next. So I don't think this criticism is fair, and I think it tends to play into this bandwagon effect, where since the movie is now doing badly at the box office, everybody is ganging up on it and saying, well, obviously it's doing so badly at the box office. Look, the box office is doing badly because of two things. Well, there's probably a lot of things, but partly there was a whole lot of negative buzz ahead of time, such that even my own son, who's not particularly in tune, as far as I know, with like the superhero movie world, had at least learned from something that he saw on the internet that maybe the Supergirl movie wasn't very good. So he learned that not from anyone who had seen it, but just from some buzz on the internet. So I think a lot of people were discouraged. Of course, it was competing with Toy Story 5, it was competing with the World Cup, it was competing with the 250th Independence Day celebration between its first and second weekends. It had a lot of things that ended up working against it, and a lot of the internet buzz was all, I suppose the negative internet buzz about the source material I couldn't criticize in retrospect, but a lot of the rest of it was kind of clickbait piling on stuff that really had nothing to do with the quality of the film, and so I think it did poorly, but not for the reasons that they tend to say. I mean, superhero films that have terrible scripts and terrible plots sometimes do very well at the box office, and some superhero films that are pretty high quality do poorly. So I don't think that's, the quality of the film is not the primary reason why it failed. Now, the fact that audiences have a mixed reaction to it didn't help, for sure. Just like it didn't help Thor or Captain America: The First Avenger, or The Incredible Hulk, of course, which was almost written out of the MCU because it did so poorly. So I guess that's enough for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.